passe. Oh, l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It's Chris O'Reilly joined by Alex Kulesh, and it's time to delve into the Bundesliga, which we've all been looking forward to doing. 4 rounds have been played, a lot of things to talk about, and to do that, to get a bit of help, we've brought in one of the big dogs, Björn Pazen, who will join us shortly to talk about some of the biggest news, the dark horses, and a big retirement as well. But before we get into that, Alex, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I have to say that the Bundesliga season for me it started. There's been some good games, but it really feels like the really big matchups haven't happened yet. It's still at an early stage. You can look at the table, but the big teams haven't started kind of trading blows yet. So that means it's a good time to talk about the Bundesliga. We're still in the feeling out stage right now, and I think it's going to get more and more interesting.
Well, that summary from you basically suggests to me that once again you're disrespecting the name of THW Kiel and not considering them a big team, seeing as they've played Magdeburg and Melsungen in the last couple of weeks. But anyway,
there's also set the scene straight already. We have a league table which tells the story already, and that's something since we do these previews a couple of match days into the season, you might just look at the table and see what's going on, but and you'll see Kiel being at the bottom and might get really worried, which we'll discuss, and maybe we should be worried. But the matchups right now are really imbalanced. 4 games in, Kiel have played a couple of big games. Flensburg haven't played a big game.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful. I'm already being careful about what the season means so far.
Well justified. Now, I have a feeling, Alex, there might be a few new people listening to the podcast, a few curious ears, because... And if you are one of those, you're very welcome. And I have a feeling because on another big podcast, perhaps a bigger podcast than our own, you might say, The Overlap, which is a football podcast hosted by a bunch of old men, basically. A bunch of old football men, including Gary Neville and Roy Keane. Peter Schmeichel, the legendary goalkeeper, was on, and he spoke very wonderfully actually about his handball days, which we're going to listen to a few clips of. Peter Schmeichel, I think, was, when he came onto the scene in England, he really captured the imagination with this strange form of starfish goalkeeping, which nobody really knew in the UK or Ireland what the hell he was doing. And the reason for that was because for half of the year, growing up in Denmark, there was no football to be played. So everyone played both handball and football together a half of the year each. Let's hear what he has to say about that.
When you first came to England, your goalkeeping style was like bizarre compared to... No, in a good way. Compared to...
How do you remember that? You would have been a small child.
It shocked everybody when you first came. The going out to the edge of the box and the long throw, the big sort of, if you like, saves where you'd sort of spread your body. Where did that sort of influence come from in your goalkeeping?
Yeah, so Denmark it's a cold country in the winters, and the facilities are not the same as they are now today. Now you can play football all year round in Denmark, but back then you couldn't. So we, as a team, we always played handball in the winters. So literally the same players playing handball. And then when you're in goal in handball, you kind of have to sort of...
Yeah, I get that.
You gotta have to trick the guy who's shooting. You have to trick him into do something so you open up somewhere, and then at the moment he executes, you kind of do that or whatever. And we did that. I mean,
so you were a goalkeeper in handball, the ones where...
Yeah, I was actually alternate years. In handball, it's such a quick game. When you've scored, you get the ball up to the halfway line straight away. It doesn't matter where your opposition is at this point. You can restart the game as long as you're in the little circle. So as soon as they've had a shot, if you've saved it or if it's in the goal, just get it up there. As soon as somebody takes a shot, you will have your wingers running straight away. So if I got the ball, I would just straight away throw it up to... And being the same players, I play with the same players, football, handball. That doesn't go away. It's not like, no, I'm playing football, now I've got to do it in a different way. It's just something we did. And we did it from when we were children, really. My first away game was at Everton. Then we drew them in the cup. And there is a situation where I actually go out and do that. And I get away, it actually hits my hand. So it's kind of like, it's a shot that I parry and it goes into the air. I get a little sort of fist to it and it gets to somebody who volleys it. And I just carry on following the ball. And I don't think about this, but I remember
the reaction.
The reaction was, I mean, it was called all kinds of things, you know, unorthodox. It was controversial, stuff like that. And I was like, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm just used to handball or football. My job is to stop the ball.
Yeah.
You know, with any means possible. And so a lot of that came from there.
Handball's very physical, though. I remember going to watch it. It's a very physical sport, isn't it?
Where did you watch it?
In the Olympics, 2012,
Yeah.
I remember going. It's very physical. Yeah. It's a good sport.
But I mean, that's the only time I've ever watched it is in the Olympics, and you do see the goalkeepers, don't you, coming out with this sort of like
spread,
yeah.
I love watching the goalkeepers, the best goalkeepers in the world. It's an art form. The guy who's shooting very often are 2 yards away.
Yeah.
You know, they have the ball here and they could do anything with the hand to put it anywhere in the goal. But they're trying to sort of trick them into, and the way they do that, it's just unbelievable. Our goalkeeper just retired, this guy called Niklas Landin. He's 2 meters tall, and he can literally take his one leg in a split second and put it up here. And it just looks fantastic when he does it. And save it, you know, they are good. They're not only good, they are the bravest people I've ever seen in my life.
And it's nice, Alex, that there's some big names on a podcast talking so positively about handball. Usually when we're hearing clips from English language media about handball, we're dealing with ignorant Americans. But this time, only good things to be said about it. And I think it's only fitting this week as well, because Peter Schmeichel's son, Kasper Schmeichel, must have felt like he was involved in a handball match of his own as he conceded 7 goals in the Champions League for Celtic against Borussia Dortmund.
Very good, very good. It's always been a part of his kind of mystique, Schmeichel being that handball goalkeeper, and everyone really attributed so much of his style to handball goalkeeping. But I think he spoke really well. You can really tell the respect that he has for handball as well, which is and you know the likes of Gary Neville and Roy Keane were all there kind of accepting it, which is good. They're not disregarding the sport, and you know he spoke well about Niklas Landin. I don't think he almost got to the real crux of it, but he didn't quite know how to explain it. This whole game of chicken that goalkeepers play with attacking players, and it's really more of a mind game than a physical. Obviously, goalkeepers like Niklas Landin, he mentioned, can get their leg above their head, but it's all about kind of a mind game, showing where to go, how, you know, making the attacker place that move. And maybe Schmeichel himself was never really on the highest level at the handball game and never got there. So he had the more classic, make yourself big, make a style. But very funny how he mentioned it. You know, it was controversial that he did it.
Yeah,
it's not something that goalkeepers did, and people got really scared. So who do you think would be the best football goalkeeper out of the current goalkeepers in handball?
I would say someone like Nicola Portner, because you can see him, you can imagine him doing diving saves across the face of goal and like having the good balance. I'd say he's good on his feet as well, which is as we know, an important part of football these days, not just making saves.
That's not a bad shout.
For those of you, anyone who is intrigued and new to the podcast, thanks to Peter Schmeichel's words, now we're going to speak about the greatest league in handball, the Premier League of handball itself, the Bundesliga, and let's bring in Björn to speak all about that with us. Björn Pazen is here to speak about the Bundesliga. Björn, only 4 rounds played in the Bundesliga, but so much to delve into with you already. Before we go into kind of the specific topics, what are your opening impressions of the new Bundesliga season so far?
Well, as you said, a lot of things have happened. So old faces come back with Martin Schwalb. Some clubs who were not so good last year now are back on the top. Kiel has already lost 2 matches. Magdeburg is no more the club world champion. Füchse Berlin have won their 2nd title with the Super Cup. So a lot of things to talk about.
I suppose one of the biggest news stories, and we won't focus on clubs, but that was related to Füchse Berlin, and that was the retirement of Paul Drux, which came as a surprise to me. I knew he obviously had the injuries, but at 29 years old, a real... he never quite reached the potential he had, I would say. He was always kind of ready to take over for Germany or take over for Füchse Berlin, but the injuries came in the way. In the end, was that a big surprise in Germany that he actually confirmed his retirement?
To be honest, it's a shame for handball that he cannot play, and it's a shame what had happened to him in last years. It was always, if there's someone who was hit by long-term injuries, and would you say, okay, now give him a nice comeback and bring him back on the form that he played before, like in 2016 or 2018 when he was in real top shape. He was always, I felt he was always injured from the shoulder to the knee to the Achilles tendon, everything like this. So then he came back not in the perfect shape for the EHF finals. And everybody said, okay, here's the time. The rest of his team is more or less at the Olympic Games and he can recover. But I heard some rumors that it's not running that well. So then he got the knee injury. He needed again another surgery, and then he had to say that it's over now. So when you see, especially, it's hard for him personally, of course, that after a time of now 8-9 years, that he was really always supposed, as you said, to be on top for Füchse and for the national team. How often he was injured, I don't know. When there was a last full season he could play, I think there wasn't even one since 2016.
Yeah, it's crazy when he 2016 winning that Euro, and in his early 20s at that point, and just not being able to take that next step. I saw a clip of Fabian Wiede speaking about the news as well, and like the emotion on his face as well. The two of them have been really coupled together as these true blue Füchse Berlin boys through the years. It's a real loss for the club as well, it seems, because he was Füchse through and through.
Definitely, yes. So he was the role model for the whole Füchse model, I would say. You see this, they have, of course, experienced top players like Matthias Gitzel or Lasse Andersson, but they always have a lot of players coming from their own youth program. And the perfect role models had always been Paul Drux and Fabian Wiede. They came at 16 or 17. They had the highlight in 2016 with the Euro. And then constantly they played in all the teams. They started at the 15, 16-year-old and then became German youth champions. They won all titles Füchse ever won, are connected with Fabian Wiede and Paul Drux. And to be honest, also Fabian Wiede had a lot of injuries in the last years and a lot of setbacks. So it's also their list of injuries is quite similar and parallel. So I hope that Fabi can play some more seasons. Yes, and for the club, of course, it is planned that Paul Drux will stay or remain part of the club in any function. Some had said that when Bob Hanning retires someday, that Paul Drux takes over as a kind of managing director, he's a kind of face of the club. So I'm sure they will find some position, but it's a pity that this position is not on the court.
How will that impact Füchse Berlin? We've talked at length about their quite small squad and their inability to bring players in. And I don't know if they're truly relying on Paul Drux this year, but it's probably kind of a big gap for them that they probably can't fill.
The thing is that they were used in the last years that one of them, Fabian Wieder and or Paul Drux, had been injured. So they have some players in the squad that can take over. So, but still, of course, mainly defense. Paul Drux had a real significance also when he was not able to shoot in the same level he shot before. But I'm sure they knew that they have to have a little cushion in their backcourt area. So now I would say what we've seen in the last years, there will be even more playing time maybe for Nils Lichtlein, or that they switch Fabian Wieder more to the center back. But of course, there will be a gap in defense. They have Lukas Herborger came in, but of course, you have to see that Koplia went out. So they have to struggle with this gap. But I don't think the gap is so huge because they always had to plan that one of their role models is injured.
We'll speak mostly in this chat about the top half of the league, the top teams, but before we go into the rest of them, just sticking with Berlin, then what do you think of the start of the season for them? It was really intriguing, I think, for a lot of us to see how they will balance their first season in the Champions League with the Bundesliga. It's very early days. But already a loss in the league and a loss in the Champions League. How do you see them kind of dealing with this added stress of two top-level competitions?
First, when we talk about the loss in the Champions League, it was a -1 against West Brom, the new club world champion. So I think there will not be many teams in this season that can beat West Brom. It was possible to win. So it was possible with the draw because they had the last attack. So I would say when take the normal calculation, you can lose against West Brom even at home. So when you see the Bundesliga defeat they suffered, nobody expected it like this. But as we're talking about the full ranking now, there's only Flensburg at the moment with a clear slate of 4 victories. So I don't think that there are any team will finish the season with less than 12 points, 12 minus points, as we only have in Germany, So I don't think that there is one team going through the whole league because it's so balanced on the first, I would say, 5 positions. So I would say the Berlin start was normal. They took this Super Cup trophy against Magdeburg. Okay, it's not the biggest title you can win, but if you beat Magdeburg after 3 defeats in 3 competitions in the last season, then it's okay. So, and in the end, in Bundesliga, will be even teams like Göppingen or Wetzlar that can manage to beat Kiel, Flensburg, or Berlin on a good day. So, for me, this is only a kind of a moment now what we see. And of course, they were lucky in the cup and unlucky in the cup draw. So they were lucky in the cup to go to the round of 16. Beating Göppingen by 1 goal. And now I would say the whole handball Germany now is angry on the coach for HSV Hamburg football because he made the draw for the round of 16. So you have the 2 matches, Kiel versus Magdeburg and Füchse versus Rhein-Neckar Löwen already in the next round. So this is
the semi-finals.
This is exactly usually a setup for the final tournament, for the semi-finals. But Steffen Baumgart, I don't think they will invite him again for any draw in handball. So what Viktor Schilagi from Kiel said right after the draw, it was after Kiel had already in the first round of them, they had already to play Hamburg. So they beat Hamburg, and of course the manager of Kiel was there when the draw took place, and he said he made everything wrong that he could do wrong in this draw. So it is what it is.
I do think, for Füchse Berlin, they have a hellish schedule coming up, and that will be a real test. So starting from the 10th of October, they have a 2-week spell where they play Wisla in the Champions League, Rhein-Neckar Löwen in the Bundesliga, Sporting Champions League, Melsungen Bundesliga, and then PSG in the Champions League. So I think we'll have a really good idea of their ability to balance the two competitions after October. But so far, it's the same old story. Matthias Giesel is out of this world. Lars Andersen, it seems to keep improving, and almost really on par with Giesel. So so far so good, but we will know a lot more in October.
But when we talk about Füchse Berlin, we should talk about one player who really now is on the level that I had expected him last season already. Is Tim Freihöfer, the left wing, one of those 5 or 6 under 21 world champions in the Füchse sport from last year. Now he gets more playing time and he pays back in goals. So he's, I think he scored almost the same number of goals as Lasse Andersson in Bundesliga and also in the Champions League. So this guy is 22 now and he's running, and it's interesting to see that he, if you let him play, then he always pays back. It's like with Nick Zichler.
Alex, tell us about your dark horses theory.
Well, this comes from a chat we had with Rasmus Boysen and kind of the transfer podcast, and it seems like the Bundesliga is just a league of dark horses. You can the big teams, but then there just seems to be a whole level of teams that have just upgraded, improved, and are really hard to judge. And in that group, I would probably put, Melsungen, who continue to impress, Hannover Bergdorf, who have Renner Zustjens, and is anything can happen with that guy. Gummersbach have really improved a lot, and of course Rhein-Neckar Löwen look good again. So my question is, out of those dark horses, who is the darkest horse and who is the brightest horse?
Smiling a little bit if Rhein-Neckar Löwen are a dark horse. When you look the last season, they're the darkest horse of all. So they were blacker than black when you see what they managed to do. And yes, now it is running. So they lost their top scorer. Everybody says, okay, Niklas Kirkelök is gone. So we have to see what this Ivan Martinovic is doing. And now he scores and scores and scores. And you have this new hierarchy in the goal. So I would say last year it was still something like 50-50 between Michael Appelgren and David Späth. Now they say, okay, give this again, under 21 world champion, give him playing time. And he's on an incredible 65 saves in the Bundesliga after 4 rounds. So he's playing, he saved more shots than Andreas Wolf or Dominik Kuzmanovic or Konstantin Möstl. So I would say Rhein-Neckar Löwen, they just improved. Then we have to see, of course, it's the last season of Juri Knorr. And I think this also relieved him that all these talkings really go to Aalborg, really leave. So I'm leaving, I'm going to Aalborg, and now I want to play handball. Full stop. So maybe this situation helps Juri Knorr a little bit. And it's running now with the Rhein-Neckar Löwen. It's exactly like 2 years ago when they had a perfect start and finally they managed to become cup winners and qualified for the European League again. Last year, it was nothing, to be honest. The whole season was, I think they were except Magdeburg was the champion and Eisenach remained in the league. I would say Rhein-Neckar Löwen were the happiest team when the season was over. So to be honest, that they know that they played much below par. So I would put the dark horse Rhein-Neckar Löwen a little bit in brackets, but I absolutely agree. Melsungen is investing in the future, and they have a coach with Roberto Garcia Parondo, who has an idea. So he has a long-term idea, and they let them work. So it's in contrast, for example, to Erlangen, who did not allow their coach to work a little bit longer. But I think he's forming a team now. He has a lot of experienced players. So when you see they play their first season in the European League since, I think, 6 or 7 years, but all of the players, they play Euros, World Championships, Champions League or whatever. They have real top stars in the team, but also the team is fitting. So they beat Kiel for the second time. So they won last year in Kiel. They won this year in Kiel. They were cup finalists. They finished 5th. And I think that Melsungen is a team to finish among the positions 3 to 7 again. So maybe more, but maybe you can surprise me, Alex, with your dark horse theory. So definitely Gummersbach is rising completely in the last 2 years. When you think back 2 years ago, they promoted from the second division and now they play European League. And what they see on their transfers, Kontin Mahé and Dominik Kuzmanovic, everybody thought those two guys play Champions League. No, they play in a little city called Gummersbach in the European League and the Bundesliga. And both, what you see now, they're improving the team. Kontin Mahé is already the kind of playing intelligence in the center back, and Dominik Kuzmanovic is incredible. What he jumped in. Okay, the goalkeeper is maybe easier to jump in a new team, but he exactly conserved his form from the Euro, Olympic qualification, Olympic Games. So this is definitely one, I would say. This is a dark horse, which will end.
How much of an impact do you think Sigurdsson as coach is having on Gummersbach? Because he's a first-time coach. He came into them in the second division. He's brought them up. They've obviously had the investment, but is Sigurdsson kind of getting the flowers that he probably deserves in Germany, or is there other drivers for their improvement?
Definitely. So you cannot count the flowers he earns or he should get from Gummersbach, because it was a risk for both sides. So he just quit as a player at Paris Saint-Germain, had never coached the team before, signed Gummersbach in the second league. It took 2 years until they promoted again. And when you see that he was awarded as best coach of the second division and the next season as best coach of the Bundesliga, so the recognition of what he's doing there in Gummersbach is huge. And he is the biggest part of the puzzle. If this puzzle has 18 players, then this piece of the puzzle is at least 25% of the whole puzzle. So I would say that his impact is great. And what he's doing, he's forming a team with young talents like Julian Köster, for example. And they have got some experienced players now with Kontin Mahé. And I think this is the absolute right person on the right job.
Yeah, it takes a special type of character to be able to manage a team that has Milos Vujovic, Kontin Mahé, Georgic Kovrabadze all in it, and just make them do what he wants them to do. But they really all seem to, hang on every word he says. He's got a great control over it, and every reason to. I mean, the career he's had and how he's proven himself as a coach already. It's nice to see someone be able to convert it into coaching so quickly.
Yeah, but I forgot one of Alex dark horse, which was Recken from Hannover. So of course they're strong. They missed the qualification for the European League quite closely in the last season. They have an ambitious coach with Christian Brokop, and they knew that they have two rising stars with Justus Fischer and Renas Uschins, but really nobody. I made an interview with the under-21 national team coach Martin Heuberger after the Olympic Games. He said nobody could guess what Renas Uschins will do in Paris, and already, what you should not forget, in the Olympic qualification, because it was on the edge, the match against Austria. If Germany lose, they're not qualified for Paris. And who scored the decisive goals? Renas Uschins. So in the national team and also now in Bundesliga. So I think he scored 2 times 10 goals in the last 2 matches. He beat Kiel. But also when you see Justus Fischer and Renas Uschins together, I think in the last match they scored or combined for 19 goals for Hannover. And those two, they're pushing themselves. They're a little bit like the young Wiede and Drux at Füchse Berlin, I would say. And Renas Uschins is from his individual things even better now as Drux was at this age. Yeah. So there's a lot to expect from them. So it will be interesting how long they will stay in Hanover, because, Fischer already unofficially, officially or not, has an offer from Kiel when Winchego and or Pekela stop. So it will be interesting how long they will play together and how they can boost Hanover. And this is the funny thing. We have talked about the dark horses. Now there are still other teams ahead of the dark horses, so white horses, which also want to become German champion. And this exactly shows the first 7 teams of Bundesliga. They can beat each other quite well, but they also can aim for international glory.
I think with Hanover, it's like Özcan's is just such a superstar. As you said, they got that big win against Victor Berlin. He scored 11 goals. Fischer scored 7 in that game. And while I don't think, they're a very dark horse. They're a pretty dark horse. I don't think they're competing at the top, but they're going to be. I think they're almost like the kingmakers this season because they can beat any team at the top. And it's just which team can survive them the most across the favorites. That's going to almost decide the title. And it comes down to whether Renner Özcan is just out of this world on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's just an exciting kind of feature of the Bundesliga this season.
Yeah, funny enough, maybe they can become the Kingsmaker, but also when you see other teams like when Berlin missed the German championship by losing against Stuttgart, for example, or Kiel were out in the cup last season against Wetzlar. So there are a lot of Kingsmakers, but I absolutely agree. To win at Hanover will be anything but easy for any team this season, no matter if it's Magdeburg, Flensburg, Kiel, or Füchse. To win at Hanover and also to win at Gummersbach is the same because they're quite strong at home, and those teams really might decide the Bundesliga ranking at the end. And even I think those matches against the teams ranked 3 to 8, 9 are more important in the final counting of the table because against each other, the top teams, this one will win, this one will win. But winning at Gummersbach, at Melsungen, at Hanover, this will be a task for all of them.
Well, we've managed to go halfway through our chat without mentioning the 3 of the top 4 already, which is par for the course for us with these chats usually. I don't want to rush the Kiel chat, so we should deal with them next, I think. 1 minute, they're putting on a world-class performance, beating Magdeburg, and then they can't buy a goal against Melsungen at home, losing at home against them for the second time in a row, as you mentioned. A lot of positives, I think, to take away from their start of the season, but also they have 2 wins and 2 losses. So how do we sum up Kiel so far?
Summing up Kiel means praising Andreas Wolf. So he's the most spectacular transfer or return to Bundesliga this season. What he did in the Kiel goal, even when they lost, that definitely it was not the mistake of Andy Wolf. So he's really pushing Kiel ahead this season. So when you see, of course, there's still Thomas Mirkwa and Benacena, but still Andy Wolf is Andy Wolf. So he brings back this security in defense. And also what we can also see is Emil Madsen, new rival from Denmark, is Kiel's best scorer right now. So and when you see that on this position, Harald Reinkind will come back. So definitely the right back position at Kiel is impressive. So what we have to see about Kiel is they have a lot of injured players, like Duvniak is more or less injured. Elefsen Skipagoto is injured. Bilik was injured. Also in key positions, they had a lot of injured players. So you never know how and when they will come back. But if the squad of Kiel is full, backed by Andreas Wolf, they definitely, I assume they're definitely stronger than last season.
Yeah, and it feels like even though they've lost a couple of games already, going back to what you said at the beginning with teams are likely to lose a lot of points this season. Probably it's going to be, if we're looking ahead, tighter than it's been like in the top half, even with teams dropping points all the time. So it's not a complete disaster that they have lost 2 games already. Alex, what do you feel about them? Because in the first place, we talk about the coach a lot and Philipp Jicha, but it feels like with this squad, it's almost more interesting things to be focusing on right now.
So I think so far that the injuries are the big story, and the big story being what will happen when they're all back. Because right now, I think they've fully solidified Erik Johansson as starting left back, Emil Madsen as starting right back. Reinkind will come in and do what he does. And so far this season, they've been playing with the corpse of Domagoj Duvniak as a playmaker because that's our only option. And that has worked okay. But when the skipper and Bilic are back, along with Duvniak, they have three very different options at playmaker. They're completely different players. And for me, the key to this season will be Jicha's decision of how this team will play with that playmaker. Because, do you trust Nikola Bilic in that playmaker position? That's a completely different style to the skipper being the leader of the team. And I think it will come down to that. Bjorn, who do you think should be that leader? Who should be their playmaker?
So definitely skipper, because from his abilities on reading a match and also going with breakthroughs and scoring. So he's a compact playmaker. So Nikola Bilic is, of course, he's a shooter and he can break through, but he's not for me this kind of hub of a team which says, okay, we're doing like this and doing like that. But maybe when you're behind 4 goals, you say, okay, we only rely on shooters. Then we have Johansson, Bilic, and Madsen in the backcourt line, and everybody just shall shoot. But if you need something to integrate the line players or the wings, skipper is definitely the best option Kiel should have. But you see also him now. He did not play the Olympic Games. So there are a lot of players from the Olympic Games coming back injured or not in a perfect shape. But he's out at the moment. But when he's on his normal form and he understands Jicha's match plan, and they made an agreement, okay, 80% is Jicha's match plan and 20% is individual class, and I can do what I ever want. So this can bring Kiel really ahead.
Yeah.
I fully agree that's what should be done, but Jicha has been really hesitant to actually give the keys to the skipper. And when he did last season, it really didn't work in many cases. Like some of their worst losses was when Jicha would kind of instill the skipper as the playmaker, and that balance of 80-20 that you mentioned, I haven't seen it yet. No. I haven't seen it at all. And that's kind of, I think, the key for Kiel this season. I think it should be the skipper, but also I'm also gonna be a little bit critical on the skipper. I think he's good enough to warrant some criticism, and I think he needs to be better physically, because he's still, like, when you look at him, he doesn't have the kind of the physique, the muscles, the speed necessary to play in the Bundesliga on a week by week basis. And I don't know if that has been a focus on him. He has been injured, so that's going to be a challenge. But I think that is something that he needs to figure out himself to be able to fully take the reins of THW Kiel. So big decision, big collaboration to come from Jicha and the skipper. And I think it can work incredibly well, or actually just dramatically spiral downwards, and we'll see Kiel finishing in the European League again. That is that's the outlook for Kiel, I think, from my perspective.
I absolutely agree. So especially these physical conditions this is what I had hoped for, that he's extending his abilities there a little bit, but we don't know exactly how this injury happens and what they're doing with the athletic coach at Kiel now. So I really cross the fingers that he comes back. We're back at Paul Drux. You remember him when he was 7 years ago. He lacked some muscles, and now he looked a little bit like he had a workout together with Andy Wolf every training session. So physical condition, 80% of Paul Drux could help the skipper definitely to stand the pressure that he has in Bundesliga.
One of the teams trying to make sure that Kiel do play more European League next season is their neighbours up to the north in Flensburg. Perfect start to the season for them. The only team with a perfect start, and they're averaging 9.5 goal wins per game. It feels like everything we almost expected in pre-season last year has come now a year later.
First, I know you love statistics. I have a question to both of you. which was the last season that neither THW Kiel nor SG Flensburg-Handewitt played in the Champions League?
Oh. I'm going to say 2013?
Alex?
Earlier
Earlier.
to it's the 90s.
No, it's not enough.
Okay, 2008.
No, it was the 2001-2002 season.
Wow.
To be precise.
Wow.
So you see now, okay, there were seasons when Germany had 4 participants in the Champions League, to be honest, but still, it's 23 years that they did not play in the Champions League, which makes the European League quite interesting this season. And but coming back to your question, Chris, absolutely, I agree. So exactly this happened, and maybe, the pressure at the beginning for all these new arrivals was too big, and now this team fit. They got the title they needed to win. It was not the German Championship, which they had hoped for, but it was the European League title. And you see that this team is playing as a team, is functioning exactly what Nikolai Grikau wants to have. And they can cope with all situations, especially when you see how they attack. I think they scored 25 goals more or 23 goals more than the rest of the league in 4 matches. So they are running and scoring, and this is really outstanding. So when you see it, okay, in contrast to Berlin and then Magdeburg, they have not played international competition by now. But when you see the opponents they are facing now, it will be easier for them, like for Magdeburg and Berlin. And I think if they come in, they can even get this flow in all competitions now. So Emil Jakobsen is outstanding. Püttlik, Jürgensen comes back with a lot of self-confidence from the Olympic Games. And yes, this team is now really, they are, everybody said before they could be the favorites, but I think especially depending, we always have to see how are the World Championship in January running, how many players come from there without or with injuries. But when you see that Flensburg has the younger team and the team without major injuries before compared to Magdeburg, so that this race is looking for a race for Flensburg. So, and you can balance it now, and we have to see later. But I'm sure they can continue the pace they play.
Definitely got to pump the brakes a little bit with Flensburg based on their schedule. They've definitely had the easiest schedule of the top teams in the Bundesliga so far. And as you said, no European competition, but I think that they are playing extremely well. They look like a well-oiled machine. And you mentioned Emil Jakobsen. I feel like sometimes we just don't give wingers enough credit. And having a top winger like Emil Jakobsen, does make a difference. He's the top scorer for Flensburg. He has 34 goals, at third highest in the Bundesliga, and he's just a goal machine and incredible to watch. He's one of the most aesthetically pleasing players since Uwe Gentheimer, I think, from just the type of skills he pulls off. So, there is a huge power to having one of these goal machine wingers, which, sometimes you think, oh, well, it's just, you can't tell as much of a difference between a winger's ability on a game-by-game basis, but it all adds up.
Yeah, when you see the left wing position at Flensburg, Lars Christiansen, Anders Egger, Emil Jakobsen. So I think they don't have enough squares in Flensburg to put on the names of their left wings there. So you have the Lars Christiansen square in front of the arena. Now Anders Eggers is back as the assistant coach in Flensburg. So the next will be the Anders Eggers square maybe. And then we have to see, okay, there's a lot of space going to the sea. You could more spares of former Flensburg left wing.
Yeah, and just like 8 of the Flensburg players in double figures for goals already this season, 7 of them Danish. And it's just, it's ludicrous how, we always joke about it being a Scandinavian team, but now they're not even pretending It's just, this is a Danish team now. And Kai Smits and Johannes Golla. But finally then, before we let you go, Björn, let's look at the reigning champions, SC Magdeburg, who, as you mentioned at the top of the show, lost their world title yesterday against Veszprém. And we've been worrying a little bit whether, ever since the Final Four last year, whether the style of play that Magdeburg have is kind of being figured out a little bit too easily by opponents now, and whether they are going to develop their style a little bit with Bennett Wieger to deal with that this season. Are you worried about that as well?
I'm worried about the constancy, because usually in the last year, everything before the Final Four in Cologne, they played it constantly on a real high level. And of course, from then and on, the opponents knew what they play, but they have creative players with Christiansson and Magnusson, and so they changed it a little bit, but in general, the style was okay, and they had a constancy in defense and attack. So when you see now, it's different how they lost against Kiel, for example. The attack was far from what they are able to. Of course, on the other side was Andreas Wolf. And when you see Pick Szeged in the first Champions League match, it was the same. They did not score a goal for 8 or 9 minutes, which never happened to Magdeburg in the last season. So, except this match in Barcelona, of course. Yes, but when it puts together this lack of constancy, and of course, they were hit hard by injured players from the Olympic Games, Felix Klar, Tim Hornke, Fredrik Pettersson. So they had their squad complete, and they had to make some late signings. What I'm really looking forward will be Manuel Zehnder when he's part of the team and he's get more and more integrated. But they had to make some late changes. This makes it a little bit more hectic in the training, I would say. So definitely Magdeburg has not lost their magic. So they still have this magic. They still have the ideas, the style of play, and the preparation done by Bennett Wiegert. But I think the teams now, more and more teams know how they can play against them.
I am starting to get bored of Magdeburg. And I'm throwing this out there. And I just think the style is it's gone to an ugly form. This one-on-one style where it's quite slow. They have incredible players, but they're looking for contact. They're looking for 7 meters constantly, and they're getting them all the time. For me, it's evolved beyond kind of fun and exciting to a little bit of a slog when I watch their games. And this comes really from the Aalborg Magdeburg game, where both teams played the same style, and it was an exciting game by scoreline, by like drama, but the actual gameplay for me, I just want a little bit more flow. And I don't know if that is a sentiment that is seen in Germany. Is that something that people are talking about? I don't know. I don't listen to the German handball media, of course, but what is the sentiment towards Magdeburg in general from the media? Is it still exciting? Is it still amazing as it was?
I would say in the previous season, the whole media, the fans, and everybody involved in handball said this is a successful style of playing. So the teams said, even other coaches said, if we would have the players like Magdeburg, we would exactly play the same style. So this style on 1-against-1, no more shooting from the backcourt position, just going through breakthroughs with all the players, getting the ball to Zaugstrup, getting a penalty shot, and on the other end, the goalkeeper safe. I don't think it's boring, to be honest. It's different to the style, of course, that Magdeburg, that Flensburg plays at the moment. They are running and running. But if they come against tougher opponents, they will also be stopped. When you run 8 times against Mihailo Masenic in Berlin, you don't run that much again. So there are still other defending roles, I would say, and you have to. But I'm sure Nikolai Krikau will adapt to it. So, and also Magdeburg will adapt to the situation that more and more teams have adapted to their style of play. So there might be some backcourt shooters now. Okay, to say, okay, if we cannot go with our breakthroughs, then we need a player who scores from 30 meters again. So, but I'm not thinking that it's getting bored. If this podcast would have been there 30 years ago, when Barcelona wins the Champions League 5 times in a row, almost with the same players, then we could say maybe this was a little bit boring, especially if we come from Zagreb at this time. But at the moment, I would not say it's boring. You have to see the development, and I'm sure Bennett Wiegert knows how to develop this team with the players he has, and I think other times will come. I absolutely agree to this Aalborg semi-final in Cologne. They were beaten by their own weapons, and I would say, okay, there are still 5-6 teams more in the world, 3 of them in Bundesliga, who can stop Magdeburg playing. But still, to be successful, you have to use your tools that you have. And if your tools are brilliantly working in a 1-against-1 breakthrough action, why should you tell Gisli Kristjansson jump from 14 meters and try to score?
Because it's more fun, more chaotic.
That's why Alex will never be a Bundesliga coach.
No, I'm not saying that it's successful. It's definitely successful, but yeah, it's starting to grind my gears.
Maybe you should start coaching in the Montenegrin league, because then I would say you have enough players that exactly do what you want, scoring from 15 meters into the angle, and have the ability to run for 40 minutes. And then you have to see, okay, the second row is coming, and they need to score from 11 meters only. But this would be happiness of you. Go maybe to Lovchen Cetinje and make an apprenticeship as a coach there.
You get big Vuko Borujan in.
Yeah, it's not fully just the backcourt shooting. I think it's the pace of the play that is. I don't know. I'm so enthralled with Sporting in the Champions League, and they're not fully reliant on backcourt shooting. They have a bit of backcourt shooting, but there's just an amazing flow with their game style. When you switch over to a Magdeburg game, it's stodgy, it's slow, it's bring it down, go 1-on-1, stop, 7 meters. So it's more about the style. I think it is successful. It's been absolutely some of the best handball in Europe for the last couple of years, but a bit more excitement, a bit more drama. There's just so little risk in their style of play, and that's why it's successful. But risk makes for good handball to watch, at least.
Yeah.
But you saw Rhein-Neckar Löwen last season when they started to play more risky, how those matches ended.
Hey, and wasn't that fun?
It was no fun.
At the end of the day, if we're looking at it from a fan's perspective, what's more enjoyable, good handball or winning? Winning is the answer, and that is the key thing. We're all set up for a great season of the Bundesliga already. Some exciting times ahead in the next few weeks, and I'm sure we'll have you on again, Björn, to delve into what's happening. But until then, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks again. See you later.
Talk soon. Take care, Björn.
You too. Ciao.
Thank you once more to Björn Pazen. Fantastic insight, as always, into the Bundesliga and everything happening around there. Definitely make sure to catch it if you can. There's streaming all around the world with HBL TV, including commentary on a highlight game of the week every round. And about half the time, it's me there with you. Thank you for listening to this latest episode of the Uninformed Handball Hour. We have, coming up very shortly, a morning club available for everyone who follows us and supports on patreon.com/handball hour. We'll be speaking about the IHF World Club Championship, which we alluded to a little bit during the chat. We'll delve into everything that happened over the last week in Egypt there. So if you're not already, make sure to join us on Patreon. But until the next time, take care, everyone, and goodbye.